Assistant Professor Mahdev Mohan.
Mr. Speaker, I support the government's commitment to reduce emissions despite the fact that we rank very favorably among the least 20% of carbon emitters in the world. I also support this bill and celebrate the ministry's commitment to a cap on the quantity of emissions by 2030, taking into account population and economic growth at that point. It is clear when I hear the second reading speech of the minister that the ministry has clearly thought of and studied the possibility of an optimal mix of solutions in technology and policy for what is currently the best position that we could take, as well as going forward, what we need to take if we need to achieve that 2030 commitment. But allow me, Mr. Speaker, to ask a couple of questions. I understand that these new regulatory measures, including the MRV, for taxable or reportable facilities, may incur costs, and that may have an impact on industry competitiveness. Companies may not regard energy efficiency improvements as a priority. Instead, they may regard these new requirements as an additional compliance cost when they are trying to maintain product quality. In ensuring that product specifications are met, more energy could be needed to complete the manufacturing process, as an example. Some experts have suggested that there could be a misalignment between the government's policies and business sentiments. How does the ministry plan to allay this concern that the corporate sector has? And how would they encourage corporations to play their part as we pledge to meet 2030? With these new policy changes, Mr. Speaker, much of the responsibility will be on these companies to step up and adhere to the enhanced regulations under both the ECA as well as the carbon pricing bill, if it becomes law. If done satisfactorily and in line with international standards, Singapore will be in a good position to participate in the external carbon markets in the future. What does the ministry envision, and the ministry and the NEA envision, of course, acting in concert with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, to actually have us take a role in the international carbon market? This is important, Mr. Speaker, given that international market mechanisms that are currently being developed under the Paris Agreement commitments and rulebook are expected to play a significant role in facilitating countries in meeting their climate commitments and goals. The Council for the European Union recently has released a diplomatic statement calling for urgent action. They say that the window for global warming to reach the 2 degrees Celsius target, the upper temperature limit that was agreed and committed to in Paris, is fast closing. And they ask parties to the Paris Agreement to create a uniform regime with rules applicable to all. On the other hand, however, Mr. Speaker, developing countries, including China, are calling for a bifurcated two-tier rulebook with less stringent reporting requirements for developing countries. This will be one of the key issues for negotiators to thrash out at COP24, the 24th conference of the parties for the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, later this year in December. I understand that Singapore has taken a position in Paris, preferring a uniform approach at that point. But given that we have such huge trade partners in both the EU member states as well as China, what is our current position as we prepare for COP24? I ask this as well because we are not just an early adopter of this uniform approach at that time, but through the commitment that we see in this bill before us, we are an early adopter of the commitments as a whole in the Paris agreements, and I celebrate this. I support this bill, Mr. Speaker.